Coming to you live from deep below the surface, this is Optimal Play. I am Brandon, and I am here to take a first impressions kind of unboxing look at Aeon's End, The Descent, and maybe talk a little bit about this and the rest of the stuff that came in the Wave 8 shipment from Kickstarter. For me, as of when I'm recording this, just yesterday. Uh, it was sort of, it brought back some interesting memories because I ran over Wave 7 with my car. Okay. So a couple, 18 months ago or something, because these are coming out pretty quickly lately. Wave 7 was arriving. It was on my driveway. So far, that's no problem. I turned into my driveway. I looked in my rearview mirror, and my neighbor's trash can was on fire. Like, or maybe I saw it as I turned into the driveway, and that's why I never properly looked up the driveway. Someone had, whether it was throwing a cigarette in there or done it on purpose as a prank, I don't know, but my neighbor's trash can was literally an inferno of fire and starting to melt. So, as you might expect, a little bit distracting as I was pulling my car into the driveway, and I went into one of those states where, like, I was driving on autopilot. I wasn't thinking about my driving. I was driving fine, but paying attention to that until I go over this bump. And I get out and find it's a box that was shipped to me. Turns out it was the last wave of Aeon's End. The box was pretty crunched. Turns out the cards and components were actually fine, so I just kind of consolidated that with some of my other Aeon's End boxes. Threw away the crunched cardboard. But that's why you didn't see me doing one of these videos with a shiny new box for Wave 7, I guess. But here is Wave 8. I think these are the wave numbers. I could be wrong there, but I think this is Wave 8 of Aeon's End. So, looks like this. I also, I got the full wave, which included this Tales of Old Gravehold. It is a box that adds kind of that expedition story content to the first couple waves, like the core set and War Eternal. I don't really understand how that works. Maybe that's a subject for another quick video or stream sometime, as we take a closer look at that. I'm really just planning on looking at the Descent box, and I will see how the length of the video is shaping up on whether I'm going to go into the two small expansions, which actually came just inside this box. They didn't include the boxes for those, just the contents are in this box. Or what. But the other thing about Aeon's End, so if you watch like my Unfathomable kind of unboxing, I try to be a little different, and I approach it like everything on this channel. I approach it the way that I really do. We're almost always playing games the same way that we would be if the cameras weren't on us. And I kind of want to do the same thing with unboxing, which means not just looking in the box and admiring the components, but actually reading the cards, talking about the new rules. So I have opened this up and peeked at their new rules. Talking about the new rules, the new cards, the new characters, and actually going into sort of a first impressions, hot takes, kind of little talk on those. So Aeon's End is usually packaged in sealed envelopes, and packets of cards you're not supposed to open. So where I think I've landed is that once the box is open, I'm going to kind of like set up what is the instructed first game when you play this. I won't be opening up any of the envelopes. I'll leave you to, I won't spoil those for you if you don't want to. But I'm just going to set up the kind of game one and take a look at all of the cards in the market and the characters and everything that entails. But first and foremost, I got a playmat because I apparently splurged on the Kickstarter. I don't think I had an Aeon's End playmat, so I'm gonna take a look at this one. It's maybe, I didn't obviously just unwrapped it. I haven't checked whether it fits in the way I have framed. It doesn't really fit in this space. This is a big playmat. It's upside down, but this is huge. Okay, well, I'll be doing my best on this giant mat. My concern with this huge mat is that it doesn't really, it's not broadly applicable to Aeon's End, which I kind of hoped it would be. But like when you've got this Zazos Outcast mat and the Friend or Foe section that are adding so much real estate here, I kind of wonder if it's something I would always want to bother to have out on the table when I'm playing Aeon's End. But anyway, that's a problem for another time. Let's look in the box itself. Here we go. Boom. All right. Yeah, so on top's your classic pamphlet advertising all their products. I actually kind of am looking forward to using this to inventory make sure that there's not some small expansion that I never realized I don't own, something like that, because I haven't always. I've gotten it more on retail than Kickstarter. And yeah, this shows the Tales of Old Gravehold, and then the Abyss and the Caverns are the names of the two small expansions that, even though it shows boxes here, they just had their components in this box, was the way it shipped. So there's a Breachmage and Nemesis, a Friend and a Foe, which I'll talk about, and 7 supply cards in each of those. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you want me to actually kind of give my first impressions of the contents of those. Otherwise, I think I'll stick with Game 1 of the Descent. It's kind of my strategy. So, there's a rules insert here too for Friends and Foes, which might help me as I talk a little bit about those. We've got rulebooks upon rulebooks. Envelope, a big envelope 4 is larger than you'd think. And then some punch boards with life tokens. These elemental tokens, I think that these were in one other previous Aeon's End product. They're tokens that you can put on the Nemesis, or maybe they weren't, maybe they're brand new. There's some products that I've just never gotten to the table. There's so many of them, and so many games to play outside of that I'm a bad Aeon's Ender. I'm a bad Breach Mage. So these elemental tokens come in Electrify, Immolate, and Venom, and you may see Breach Mage or card effects that put these on enemies. And then the things that they do, Electrify is gain 1 charge, Immolate, you may destroy a card in hand, Venom, deal 2 damage to an enemy. Those trigger at 1 of 2 times: when you defeat the minion that it's attached to, or when you add a second elemental token to the same enemy, they both fire. So if you electrify an enemy, nothing happens, but then if you immolate that enemy too, then you immediately discard both those tokens, gain 1 charge, and destroy a card in hand. Like, they both fire simultaneously. So yeah, that should be interesting to play with. We have ether tokens too, which kind of lets you give extra ether to your allies for them to use on their turns. New art on the Nemesis tokens, always neat. And then here we go. First game setup. Okay, so we're just gonna follow this and take a look at the aspects of the box as we do. So let's start with Card Pack 1A. You can see I've opened it so that you didn't have to watch me struggling with cellophane. Okay, so everything in this 1A deck should be the 9 sets of cards we'll use as the supply initially. And then as you progress in the kind of unboxing campaign, as I always refer to it, you'll add more to your barracks and then have some strategy as to how you build your market. For now, let's slide this playmat over a hair so that I can just lay these out as I read them. All right. Oh, back, front. Goodbye 1A cards. New gems. This may shock you, but there are new gems in Aeon's End, the Descent, like Flamium. 3 cost, gain 2 ether, or place an immolate token on an enemy. So let me have those tokens handy so I don't forget what they do. Okay, so immolate tokens. When they fire, you may destroy a card in hand. So this is gain 2 ether, or basically later you may destroy a card in hand. And interestingly, there's a little, in multiplayer, there's a little bit of nuance there. You refers to who triggered this. So if you put an immolate onto a minion and then someone else puts venom onto a minion, triggering your immolate, that person is you, and they get to destroy a card in hand. So there will be some coordination too as to who wants to trigger that when they have that crystal they want to burn from hand. Should be pretty interesting. Okay, so That is the basic way to get immolate tokens and some delayed gratification card trashing. We've got Washium. Wait, is the other one gonna be like Grassium or something? Acidic Flowmite. Okay, they were starting to seem. I mean, I guess they are like the Pokemon starters, right? And there's a fire one, a water one, and an acid one. It's not quite grass, but I wonder how intentional that was. So Washium says, gain 2 ether. You may spend 1 ether to focus your closed breach with the lowest focus cost, and that's 4 cost. Seems great. I love discounts on focusing breaches, particularly for mages that start with their like second breach, either very easy to open or already open, so that they can get straight to focusing the more expensive ones. Yeah, it seems like if you use that one. Well, let me think about this. The cost to focus breach number 2 is 2, right? So this is not better. It's worse. You would want to just generate the 2 ether with this. You wouldn't want to spend 1 to focus it. Is that right? Is that? And then let me open the breaches that are included in the box, because of course they are. Sanity check this. Yeah, 2 to focus. Okay, 3 to focus, 3. 4 to focus, 4. So this is actually only a good deal for focusing breach 4, right? And that has to be your lowest focus cost, closed breach. You gain 2 or spend 1 to focus. So that means it's worse focusing your 2 breach. It's break even focusing your 3 breach, right? Whether you use this to discount it by 2 or to generate 2 ether. And then it's better to focus your 4 breach. But I'm not impressed by this gem. It's 4 cost. I think a lot of the time I would rather have Flamium, which is 3 cost in place of those immolate tokens. Alright, we'll save us Acidic Flowmite. 5 cost. Gain 3 ether. You may lose 1 charge if you do place an immolate token on an enemy. Oh, the starting gems are all about the immolates. Okay. I mean, it combos well with Flamium. It's a 5 cost 3 ether, so I would expect the text to be like balanced to be not all that strong. And yeah, losing a charge to eventually destroy a card in hand. Yeah, it seems niche, I would say. But okay, more immolate comboing. I wonder if these starting barracks cards, I was hoping that I would get a smattering of all the mechanics, but I wonder if they're like immolate focused and then electrify is introduced as the envelopes open. That'd be a little bit of a bummer for the sake of this first look at the box, but maybe that's how it works. All right, onto the relics. 3 cost. Coruscating Mirror. When a minion is drawn from the Nemesis deck, you may reveal this card from hand to place an Electrify token on that minion. Okay, so we're getting some Electrify. So if this is in your hand, when a minion is drawn from the Nemesis deck, reveal this to Electrify. And what Electrify does is, when you trigger it, gain 1 charge. Okay. That's cool. I mean, we haven't really even gotten to what it does when you play it, which is any ally draws a card and gains an ether token. So it's a 3 cost that gives a card draw and an ether to an ally for them to use on their turn. And it electrifies, gains the occasional charge. It's really kind of a Swiss Army knife. It does a little bit of everything, doesn't it? But I love cards that I love cards that are supporty, which this one definitely is. And I also love cards that kind of are potentially a big part of why you won, but you would have trouble proving it, if that makes sense. Like, it's just giving you like incremental benefits, or like I love Curse and Bless in Arkham LCG, because you're throwing things in the bag. You didn't do anything when you put a bunch of blessings in the bag. You just accomplished nothing other than later on the game's going to go swing more in your favor. I love that shit. So this card's probably up my alley. All right. 7 cost with a develop cost. Yeah, so this box brings back develop. I'll talk about that in a second. 7 costs. Defensive Dome. When an attack is drawn from the Nemesis deck, you may reveal and destroy this to discard that attack without resolving it. And when you play it, any player gains 2 life. This seems great. Canceling an attack altogether, not something you get to do very often. And this is expensive, so you're probably buying it in the late game and then using it in with the late game big attacks. Seems solid to me. And then he, as you know, for if the attack doesn't line up with getting to with if the attack doesn't happen to line up with hitting while this is in your hand, you play it to heal someone by 2. Also quite good. I think this card's great. And then develop. So this was in a previous wave, but develop is a smaller cost. So you can, for 4 ether, you can develop this card, and that means take it from the supply and put it kind of aside into your development area. And then on a future turn, you can pay for again to gain the card from your development area. So it lets you split up the 7 into 4 and 4. It is less efficient in total because you spent 8 instead of 7, but it is maybe a way to access that expensive card that you couldn't otherwise. And also other things, components in this game might interact with that mechanic, let you develop a card for free, that type of thing. So I think this card seems great. And next is Silent Sting. We're up to the spells. 3 costs with 2 develop costs. On cast, place a Venom token on an enemy and deal 1 damage to it. Okay, so we are actually seeing all 3 tokens used in this starting barracks, so that's cool. The Venom tokens deal 2 damage. So this is like deal 1 damage now and deal 2 damage either when a second elemental token is added or when this minion is destroyed. You could like reroute that damage to something that, another minion that has been drawn since then or something. And if you were to just resolve 2 of these and let the 2 Venom stack and then go off, it would be 3 damage each. That seems good for 3 costs. I think this card's cool. I also, for the reasons I was just saying about, like, I like doing things now that don't do anything but will matter later. These elemental tokens, super up my alley. I love the idea of the Silent Sting not doing much now and then setting up for an explosion of damage later. I'm in. I like it. Okay. 3 spells left. The Legacy Slayer. While prepped, when any player gains a relic, gain 1 charge. On cast, deal 3 damage. While it's prepped, when any player gains a relic, gain 1 charge. So you gain 1 charge when any player gains a relic. And on cast, deal 3 damage. Which 3 damage is fine for 4. And then while it's prepped, you can get the occasional free charge. I mean, you can only gain a relic, the team can only do it 10 times per game max, so you're not going to just crank out charges with this thing. But yeah, it's a 4 cost 3 damage spell that occasionally will generate you a charge. I think I like Silent Sting better, but this is neat. Next is Time Rift. 5 costs spell. On cast, deal 4 damage. Each player may reveal the top card of their deck and either discard it or turn it to the top of their deck. Really classic effect. Just let you filter the top of your deck, which is great in pretty much any deck building game for getting through the less exciting cards in your deck that you haven't been able to trash yet. I think this is great. Straightforward. I like it. And it affects all players, so you're helping everyone filter their deck and have better turns. Finally, Restoration Siphon. That's really gorgeous art. I like it. It's Brahma, and I'm not sure who, I think. It looks like the same character who's in the Legacy Slayer art, but I haven't taken a look at the breachmages yet. So anyway, Restoration Siphon is 7 cost. On cast, deal 6 damage or deal 1 damage. Gravefold gains 3 life. Sure, yeah. I think that in most games you're hoping to deal the 6 damage with this over and over, but in a pinch, that Gravefold gains 3 life could definitely save your butt. So, also, yeah, I guess you're still gonna have a Gravehold dial in this. This box is the prequel of, I think it's like how Brahma. I just glanced briefly at the story blurb. It's like a pilgrimage underground to kind of try to escape these nameless and establish a new safe haven for the humans. That's what this is about. It's a prequel to kind of the establishment of Gravehold. So I wasn't sure whether in the flavor of the scenario it would be the grave old, but I guess it has to use that same verbiage, right, to be compatible with other Aeon's End expansions. So yeah, I guess that's unsurprising. That even maybe Gravehold in this is metaphorical. It's the spirit of the pilgrims. Anyway, what do we got next in our setup? I'm just going to follow along on this. Next, find the player mats for the following breach mages: Brahma, Janti, Laysan, and Thraxir. Okay, so they all get their set of breaches, 10 life tokens, so pretty normal. And then it's going to go on, I'm sure, and say deck 1B is the starting hands, turn order reference cards, and so on. Okay, so let's take a look at the breach mages. Some of these, like Zazos here, I mentioned are in that small box that's associated with this, so I'm going to skip over those. The ones listed here were Brahma. Janti is the one we can see in some of the spell art. Laysan and Thraxir. Okay, so we got those four. Get those out of the way. And I'm going to open this mainly so that we can see their signature cards. All right, this is the front. Yes, looks like we go straight into... Oh, okay. So all of their signature cards are up front, and then lots of crystals and sparks and turn order cards and reference cards. Sure. Yep. Okay. So let's take a look at Brahma, the leader. She is a lot younger than I'm used to seeing Brahma. It's a character who's appeared in several other Aeon's End products. She's going to start with this Funneled Rage in her starting hand with 4 crystals, and her starting deck is going to have 3 crystals, Eternium, and Spark. 1 Spark, so she has 2 of these. And then her ability is Regenerate. 5 charges to activate during any player's main phase, gain 4 life. You may suffer 2 damage. If you do, Gravehold gains 4 life. Yeah, Brahma, I can't speak for every time she's been represented in an Aeon's End box, but she's usually a pretty straightforward healer, so that so far matches up. Backside, complexity rating 2. The world wasn't always broken. I've read about it in the ancient texts we guard so preciously. Erythiza, Carrick, Azrius, towering cities, fiercely guarded strongholds, bastions of civilization. Places where humankind could gather together, not just in roving bands of a few dozen struggling survivors, but thousands, millions. We had roots then. We had stability. We could share ideas and collaborate and grow. Nothing grows anymore. Like weeds in the cracks of ruins, all we do is survive. The elders tell me there's nothing better to hope for in this world beyond our sisterhood and survival. But I know better. Janti came to us from the outside and found the sister words. She is something new, brilliant, shining, green, and thriving. Dandelions on our blighted ground. And if there is Janti, there is hope out there somewhere. There is a city still standing, defensible from the nameless, where we can be safe, raise children, begin to fix something in this broken world we've inherited. I'm not going to read the entire flavor text for all of these, but I thought maybe she'd be an interesting glimpse into the general story of this box. So we just have her cards left to look at. They are Funneled Rage, a spell that says when prepped, when you suffer damage, gain an ether token. When a player would suffer damage, you may suffer that damage instead. Oh, she heals herself by 4 at a time with Regenerate and can take damage for others. Potentially pretty useful. But only, while this card is prepped, so you would need to leave it in your deck and it's a 1 damage spell. Alright. And, it's that's all true of any starting card, so. And then she also starts with Eternium in her deck. This lets you gain an ether. You may suffer damage. If you do, an ally gains an ether token. Oh, so she's really interacting with these ether tokens with both of her signature cards. So hopefully she's a good healer and a good shopper, or at least good at helping other people buy the cards they want. I like it. Okay, next is Janti. Oh, and I should glance at her breaches. She has standard breaches. Okay, I'm not going to go so far as to dwell on where they're all oriented. But she has standard breaches. Janti, though, the breach speaker, she doesn't have a breach 1, and she starts with no open breaches. So that's always a fun one, when you've got to figure out how to even get your breaches available Okay, she says starting hand, 4 crystals and a redirector, and her starting deck is 4 crystals and a spark. Not an infuser, that must be someone else's. Okay. It also says read the backside of this map for additional rules, so let's do that now. Shuffle the Golden Infusion, Infernal Infusion, Sapphire Infusion, Mirrored Infusion, Iron Infusion, and Spirit Infusion cards face down to form the Infusion deck and place it next to this mat. That's cool. Okay. Place it next to this mat. So they're all relics. And then... So the Infuser, though, is not hers. She starts with a Redirector. There's all these infusions, and I found a card in here that's the Infuser, and she has not mentioned it. That surprises me. But, okay. That really surprises me. We'll see if another Breach Mage mentions this. Otherwise, I do see the quote on it as Thrax here. Okay, so maybe it's Thrax here. I'm just surprised that the Infuser and the Infusions don't go together. All right, really quick. Her Redirector starting spell says, cast to deal 1 damage, resolve any effect on or attached to the breach this was cast from 1 additional time. Okay, so if you're modifying your breach, then this doubles those effects, but doesn't do much else because it's just a spark otherwise. Okay, so her Interlace ability for 4 charges says, gain the top card of the infusion deck and place it into your hand, or destroy an infusion in play. If you do, deal 8 damage. Wow. So you'll have these 6 different infusions shuffled. They're all 7-cost relics, which sounds like they'll probably be pretty powerful. So you get them by spending 4 charges. And you get whichever random one is shuffled to the top. So a quick look at these. These are Infernal Infusion. Attach this to any player's breach. When a spell is cast from this breach, it deals an additional 2 damage. Okay, so it's a 2 damage amp on that breach for the rest of the game, or until she destroys it to deal 8 damage. And the Redirector can double that to 4 damage if it is cast from the breach with the Infernal Infusion on it. Golden Infusion, attached to any player's breach. I think that's starting to become... I think we're learning that that's what they're all going to do. When a spell is cast from this breach, the player who casts that spell gains 2 ether. Iron Infusion. If this is destroyed, deal 5 damage. Wow, so she destroys this with her Interlace option. 13 damage? It's pretty good. Pretty good amount of damage we've just built into a character. Attach this to any player's breach. When a spell is cast from this breach, Jaunty gains 1 charge. Oh, she gets the charge regardless of whose breach this is on. Neat. I like it. And those charges can help her destroy it for 13 damage. Mirrored Infusion attaches to any player's breach. When a spell is cast from this breach, the player who casts that spell may return it to their hand instead of discarding it. That's usually a very strong effect. Sapphire Infusion. After I take a sip of my monster. Attaches to any player's breach. 2 spells may be prepped to this breach. There are default rules about attachments, right? Can you only have 1 attachment on a breach? Because two spells being prepped to it, suddenly that means if you pile all of these onto a breach, it can be used twice as much and get all these effects. But is that how this works? Attach. Some relics allow you to attach them to a breach. When you attach a relic to a breach, place that relic underneath the breach token. You cannot attach a relic to a breach that already has a relic attached to it. That's what I thought. Just double checking those rules. So the Sapphire letting you prep 2 spells doesn't mean you can combine that with another infusion to do double the triggers. Finally, the Spirit Infusion. Attach this to any player's breach. When a spell is cast from this breach, the player who casts that spell may destroy a card in hand. Cool. I love a breach mage with their own little mini game going on, and this seems great. Her obvious downs. She's much more. I think she's more of a support player. Like, she starts with all closed breaches, so she sure isn't doing early game minion management. She is hopefully inching towards getting those open and maybe trying to get an early infusion onto someone who is a little faster in the early game, a little more aggro. Could really get the ball rolling nicely. The problem is you don't know which infusion you'd put out, right? So early game, it would be incredible to get a few charges, whether you buy them or get them from another way, and start amping someone's damage by 2. But you don't know that's what it'll be. Okay. I like it. I think that's cool. So that is Jaunty. Next we have Laysan, the Huntress. Starting hand. So standard breaches, it looks like. Starting hand of 3 crystals, 1 unsealed essence, and a spark. And that's it. That's her 1 signature card. Crystals and sparks in her deck. Read the backside for additional rules. This one's complexity 6. What was Jaunty? Complexity 5. Okay. So Brahma was 2. Definitely the simplest. Oh boy. Shuffle the Giga Inferno. Here we go. Hulking Comet. Mountain Gust. Titanic Jasmite. And Towering Obelisk cards. Together face down to form the Ultimate Form deck and place it next to this mat. Cards can only be gained from the Ultimate Form deck using Laysan's ability. Place the Manifest token next to your mat. It does not begin in play. There's a Manifest token? Oh, it's this. This giant thing is the Manifest token? Manifest token for Laysan. Yep. Okay. I don't know that I would call this a token, but sure. Yeah. It's like, it's the size of my head, basically. Okay, we'll look at that once we figure out how it hits the table. Her starting gem is Unsealed Essence. Gain an Ether. If you have not activated your ability this game, gain an additional Ether. Wow, so that's 2 Ether from the start, and then it gets weaker later. You'll want to trash it later. Once you've activated your ability, it's a crystal, but potentially a really strong start. Okay, Manifest Monstrosity. Activate during your main phase. Place the Manifest token on your player mat so that it covers this ability and resolve its immediately effect. You cannot activate this ability again this game. Wow, so 6 charges and you just like transform. You become the monstrosity. Wild. Okay, this just goes here permanently. Never seen anything like that. Okay, I like it. Immediately, gain 4 life, up to a maximum of 14 life. Reveal the top 3 cards of the Ultimate Form deck. Add 1 of those cards to your hand and return the rest to the deck. So there's 5 in the deck. You'll look at 3, choose 1 to add to your hand. Your maximum life is 14. Whenever any player would suffer damage, you suffer that damage instead. When you have 0 life, do not resolve on exhaust effects. You may still gain life even when you have 0 life. Oh, so you become a tank for the whole team who cannot be exhausted? Seems good. And then your ability is Smash. 5 charges. Activate during your main phase. Gain 4 life. Return the card you gained from the Ultimate Form deck from your discard pile to your hand. If that card was destroyed, return it to your hand. Oh, okay. So every game with Laysan, you're just going to get one of these. It's not that much like Jaunty, where you are trying to get as many into play as possible. These are all 8 cost. There are 5 Ultimate Forms. You're going to get 3 to choose from. You're going to choose 1. You are never going to use the other 4 cards in that game, from what I can see. I guess unless these have a way to get more, but it doesn't seem like it. It just seems like you turn into this ultimate tanky monstrosity and you get 1 powerful card. So let's see what it is. What they are, rather. Hulking Comet. 8 costs spell. Cast, deal 4 damage. Any ally draws 3 cards and discards a card in hand. Oh, 4 damage is sure, fine. But an ally drawing 3 cards and discarding 1, that's extremely good. Giga Inferno. Cast, deal 5 damage. Any player focuses a breach. Any player gains 1 charge. Really just a good team building. Yeah, it's a team building spell. Mountain Gust. Deal 6 damage divided however you choose to any number of enemies. I love being able to divide up damage in Aeon's End. Not wasting it. It's always the worst feeling thing when you overkill a minion. That seems good. It might be my favorite so far, even though I think these have all been good. The Towering Obelisk, which is a relic. Any ally gains 3 charges, or any player destroys up to 2 cards in hand or discard pile. Whew. Oh, that's pretty good. An ally gaining 3 charges is the majority of their way to using their ability in most cases. Or a player to getting to destroy 2 cards in hand or discard pile. Real good. And Titanic Jasmite. This gains 4 ether. You may place the next card you gain this turn into any player's hand. Oh. Then you're taking damage for people and you're shopping for your team. You're really supportive. These are a lot of really interactive breach mages so far. They're not selfish. All of these kind of are supporting in some way. Brahma can take damage for people and heal herself. Layson is kind of the same. It's a little funny that they are both in this box, but is doing more than that. Almost all of her kind of ultimate cards support other allies as well. And then Jaunty can attach these infusions to their breaches so that they get cool effects. Yeah, that's really interesting what a trend that is in this box, but I like it. That's the way I like to play these games, is very interactive, very cooperative, so cool. Thraxir, the commander. Standard breaches, except I see the 4th one is a different icon. So let's grab, here we go, the Judgment Breach. Okay, it looks like it's priced like a normal breach, but once opened, +1 damage for each other opened breach Thraxir has. Oh wow, okay. So you want to get all of his breaches open. Like, that's pretty straightforward. What's his complexity level? So far, I haven't looked at anything else. Seems like low complexity. Yeah, complexity 3. And it says here on the back, Thraxir's 4 breach is the Judgment Breach. Spells cast from Thraxir's open Judgment Breach deal 1 additional damage for each other open breach Thraxir has. So we found it. I think we have found the selfish breach mage, the one that the other players want to be sending resources to help him get his breaches open and start flinging spells for 6 each. Ideally, with the Sapphire, the infusion on it that lets 2 spells get cast from that breach. That starts to become a lot of extra damage. There go the breaches. Okay, so he starts with the infuser. Turns out that was his all along. 3 crystals and a spark in his starting hand with the infuser, 4 crystals and a spark in starting deck. The infuser says, during any player's turn, when that player focuses or opens a breach, you may discard this. If you do, gain 2 ether tokens. Or gain 1 ether. So it's 1 ether, but it's 2 if someone else focuses or opens a breach, kind of while you're waiting for your turn. Then you discard this, get 2 ether tokens. Okay, that's cool. This is interesting. So this doesn't synergize. Well, yeah, this doesn't synergize with people wanting to send him, focus his breaches and stuff for him. But I guess we haven't seen very many of those mechanics. Mostly, well, any ally can focus a breach was on one of the ultimates. Yeah, I guess there's not a lot of breach focusing for each other here. Anyway, and then his ability for 4 charges is Reality Warp. Activate during any player's main phase. That player focuses a breach. Then you gain a card from the supply that costs up to twice the focus cost of their opened breach with the highest focus cost. It's funny to look for the focus costs of opened breaches because I feel like that's going to cause people to flip them over and check a lot, even though I think it's just going to be 2, 3, 4 for slots 2, 3, 4. So you gain a card from the supply that costs up to twice the focus cost of their open breach with the highest focus cost. Okay, that's what I can. If it's a 4 breach that they have open, the player that you've chosen, you can get any card pretty much. They don't usually get more expensive than 8. Seems good. And then finally, if that player has no closed breaches, deal 8 damage. And this is, you can choose yourself here. So it's completely valid to just get all your breaches open. So your Judgment Breach is dealing tons of damage, and then just start cranking out 8 at a time. Yeah, I can see how he's much more straightforward. But he's cool. Okay. Mages. Done. What is the next step in our setup? Construct a turn order deck. We don't need to do that right now. Actually, I do. For the friend or foe thing, yeah, we're gonna want those. When we talk about friend and foe, they go in the turn order deck, so that's kind of unique. Is there a spot on this board for the turn order deck? Here we go, right down here. All right. Okay, place the Swarm foe mat and the Delana, the healer friend mat, on the table near the supply. Okay, so we have space for that, but I don't. Let's see how much this fits on screen. This giant mat. All right, kind of. There's this friend area with a friend deck and friend discard, and then up here there's a foe. Here we go. There, foe deck, foe discard, and they both have additional cards, additional discard. So a lot going on there. Open. So let's see. We've got. I assume that friend and foe is part of this stack of stuff. Yes. The Swarm and Delana. Okay. So in this box, there's 3 friends and 3 foes, but I think that though the other 2 are probably from the small box expansions that were also packaged. I think that the core set components, the Descent big box components, said there were 4 friends and foes, but I'm guessing it's 1 per envelope you open in the 4-part campaign. So anyway, friends and foes. We're also going to need deck C, which has their cards. So be sure to open it from the front. We've got these banners. Okay, reveal the top 6 cards of this deck. Each player chooses one of these banner cards to add to their starting hand, and then destroys a card of the same type from their hand. Place the remaining banners. Yeah, so the banners interact with the friend and foe. The friend and foe work similarly. They are not players, but they do have a card in the turn order deck. They have a friend. There's a friend card and a foe card, so they would go once per cycle. The rules say it looks like this first time setup says to go ahead and use both. What the rules insert also says is you can use one or the other. If you use just a friend, the game will be easier, and if you use just a foe, the game will be harder. So it's a little bit of a knob to turn on your difficulty if you want. So what these have their own deck and discard that kind of like a nemesis. They'll be drawing and resolving cards. But anyway, what I'm calling attention to now is that they have an ability that is used every time they get enough charges for it. And the reason I'm pointing that out now is because these banners we just mentioned go into your starting hand if you're playing with friends and foes, and say things like this Banner of Sagas replaces a crystal and says gain 1 ether or the friend gains 1 charge. So you could play this Banner of Sagas to give a charge to Delana the healer, who would eventually use her bandage ability. Any player or Gravehold gains 4 life. There's also Banner of Chronicles that says the foe loses 1 charge. The foe, in this case, would be the Swarm, so you can have them use their Call the Hive ability less often. We'll look at that in a second. There's also the Banner of Infusion. Gain an ether, or any player loses 1 charge. If they do, the friend gains 2 charges. So similar to the Saga's banner, but you can channel your charges into the friend. Banner of Energy. You may discard a card in your hand that costs 2 or more. If you do, the friend gains 2 charges. Banner of Siphon, it's a spark or the foe loses 1 charge. And Banner of Volt, a spark or the friend gains 1 charge. And oh right, and they have 4 card decks. 5? This one has 5? Oh, these are broodlings. Okay. They have their own minion tokens. There we go. What else is in here? Oh, some other... Okay, these are some Nemesis-specific cards, I think. So I won't worry about those at the moment. Okay. So the Delana cards... So here's how we would set this up. Because I looked at these rules. Delana is going to go on the friend slot. Or, on the table anywhere if you don't have this insane playmat. You'll shuffle up the Delana the healer cards. Place them, it's a 4-card deck, place them next to her, reveal the top one. So it says, Enhance. It's an attack that says any player focuses a breach, or any player discards a prep spell. If they do, Delana the healer gains 3 charges. Yeah, so the upcoming card in their deck, what they will resolve on their turn, is known, and you'll always keep the next one face up, so you'll always know what's going to happen on Delana's next turn, and it'll be the same with the Swarm. So the Swarm is going to go in the foe section. The Broodlings, let's see, place the next 5 cards face up above the foe's mat. So these Broodlings which are just 3 health minions with persistent. Any player suffers 1 damage and discards a card. So these are going to go kind of up in this additional cards section. And shuffle the next 4 cards, place them face down next to the Swarm foes mat, reveal the top card of that deck. Okay, so the Swarm, like this attack, is Descend and Devour. Place a Broodling into play, the Swarm gains 1 charge. And what the Swarm is working towards is Call the Hive. Place the bottommost minion from the Nemesis discard pile back into play. Whoa, the bottommost. Okay, so you'll see the same minions again in the order you killed them, which probably means it's the weakest ones, give or take, coming back into play. Okay, that's cool. If there are no minions in the Nemesis discard pile, place 2 Broodlings into play instead, so 2 of these would enter play. And these also say that they get returned to the Broodling deck when they're discarded, so they don't go into the Nemesis deck and respawn. Yeah, so that's what's going on with Friends and Foes, is they are in the turn order deck. When their turn comes up, they are going to use the face-up attack from their deck. It's called an attack no matter what, but the Friend's abilities are favorable, and her attack is any player focuses a breach. So it's not very literal on the word attack there. They'll use that ability, and then any time that they reach their necessary number of charges, they will also trigger their activated ability at that time. They can go over their limit, so like Delana, since you saw you can get her 3 charges, she's not capped at 5. She's at 4 and you give her 3 charges, she will have 7, immediately spend 5, trigger her ability, and go down to 2. So you're not going to waste anything that way. I want to see what our other cards are. We've got Energize. Delana the healer gains 2 charges or any player gains a charge. Soothing Aura. Any player draws a card or any player gains 2 ether tokens. And Restore. Delana the healer gains 2 charges or any player returns a card from their discard pile to their hand. Okay, so a lot of little boosts. And if you are making the choice to give her these charges, then she will heal for quite a lot. 4 to a player or Gravehold. And then the Swarm, places a Broodling into play and gains 1 charge on Descend and Devour. Blistered Flesh, place a Broodling into play and Gravehold suffers 2 damage, or the Swarm gains 3 charges and the Friend gains 1 charge. Wow, so if you play with just the foe, you're just not getting the upside of that choice. Jeez. Summoning Screech says, place a Broodling into play with 4 life, or any player discards a relic in hand that costs 2 or more. And Wriggle, the Swarm gains 2 charges or Gravehold suffers 3 damage. So, when they go through their deck, you'll shuffle up their deck, reveal the top one again, and kind of continue the same way. I think it's neat. It doesn't have a whole lot of overhead. Like, it's a little extra benefit. It's something you can play around and some extra decisions to make, but I don't feel like it really complicates the game too much. And I like that particularly the foes can mix and match with the nemesis. Like, seeing the minions getting revived, reborn, reanimated, whatever reword you want to use. Minions coming back to life with the Swarm may not feel the same with one nemesis as it does with another. So I think that's cool. And there were 4 of each, friend and foe, in the box. I think that the others are in the envelopes, so we're not going to look at them now. But I like it. I think that's a cool mechanic. Okay, so we got those set up. Next step, does that mean we're up to the Nemesis? Yes. Place the Infector's Nemesis mat on the table next to the supply. Place a pile of Nemesis tokens next to this mat. Set the Nemesis life dial to 60. So let's take a look at the Infector. Boom. The first Nemesis in the Descent. It's 4 difficulty. Setup. Shuffle all the Infection cards together and place them face down to form the Infection deck. And this tells me that the next 6 cards... These are Scorched Pearls. Oh, these are curses. Right? Starts the game in the curse deck. Okay, there's actually a spot up here. Does it say shuffle? Are they not all the same? They look the same. It didn't say shuffle. Okay. place them face up on the curse deck. So for nemesis that put bad cards into your deck, there's a spot for it on this insane playmat. Shuffle the next 12 cards. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Face down to form the infection deck. Yes, lots of infections. Okay. They are things like itching infection. Discard a card in hand that costs 3 or more or suffer 1 damage. Spreading infection. Place a card in hand on the top of your deck or suffer 1 damage. Disabling infection. Discard a prep spell or suffer 1 damage. So that seems to be the common theme, is something bad happens or you can always suffer damage to get out of it. With Delana the Healer pumping out health, it seems like the play, frankly. Okay, so this would get shuffled and set next to the Nemesis mat. So we've got Nemesis. Oh, there's a spot here. Nemesis specific cards. Gorgeous. Okay. I'm not going to build the whole Nemesis deck here, but I do want to be able to take a look at some of the Nemesis cards. Okay, it looks like I've got them all right here. The basics and the Nemesis specific ones. All right. Be sure to read all the setup and additional rules for the Infector. So yeah, let's continue looking at the Infector. It has 60 health. On Unleash, if the Infector has 0 Nemesis tokens, it gains a Nemesis token. Then reveal the top card of the infection deck, and the player with the fewest infections gains that infection. With the fewest infections? So wait, where do they go? You gain them. How do you track who has the fewest? Otherwise, each player resolves all their infections. Oh, here we go. Additional rules. Infections stay in front of players permanently. They're not a card in your hand or deck. Okay. Oh, that makes sense. They have a different back. If a player would gain an infection and cannot, each player resolves all of their infections instead. Oh, geez, you don't want to let this deck run out. When a player is exhausted, any player gains 2 infections instead of Unleash twice. So, okay. So it's using a Nemesis token to toggle back and forth between 2 Unleashes. When it doesn't have the token, it gains a token and someone gets an infection. And then the next time it unleashes, it discards the token and everyone resolves all their infections. There's no built-in way to get rid of these, huh? Yikes. So maybe you won't want to be suffering that damage every time it goes off. That sounds like a lot of damage. Okay, I just want to look at a few of these Nemesis cards, and that's the end of the initial game setup. So I think that after I look at these, I think that will be the end of the video. I will save. I believe there are new expedition treasures for the system where you kind of level up your deck and the Nemesis, all that stuff. There are more packets of cards in there. I'm not going to go through all those on this video. Let's just see what kind of things the Infector does. Yeah, and I'll peek at a couple basic cards, but they're generally, they live up to their name. So the Infector, has Merc Spewer, a 3-shield, 1-health minion that says, defeated if this minion was defeated by damage from a spark gain of infection. Oh, weird. It's an early game minion that punishes you for sparking it, and Persistent Gravefold suffers 2 damage. That's fun, actually. I like that design. Bubbling Veins, to discard spend 6 ether, and in power 3, reveal the top 2 cards of the infection deck, though players collectively gain those infections. Brutal. And Plaguebringer. Immediately, this minion suffers damage equal to the number of players in the game. So higher player count equals less hit points on this. Persistent, Gravefold suffers 2 damage, or reveal the top card of the infection deck. The player with the fewest infections gains that infection. That is so interesting. I don't feel like minions often scale backwards with the number of players. They must consider the infections to be harder with the higher player count or something, but there's a little bit of make good there. Let's take a look at, we've got, some of these are even familiar, I think, like the Banesire, 6 health minion, Persistent Unleash. Chaos Orb. Yeah, I didn't realize that these were getting kind of reprinted, but I think a lot of these are reprints. Some of them aren't, though, like Bone Titan. This, it looks like you're going to always use the Scorched Pearls when you're playing with the Descent cards, because this one says, Bone Titan defeated, gain a Scorched Pearl from the curse deck, and Persistent Gravefold suffers 2 damage. So the Scorched Pearl is this deck of cards you have to gain when instructed to, And it's a gem that says when you play it, either gain 1 ether, suffer 1 damage, or spend 3 ether, destroy this. So yeah, clogs up your deck with pretty weak gems until you pay to destroy them. Okay, so the basic Nemesis cards here do that. I'm a little surprised. I thought that those would be associated with 1 minion, or with 1 Nemesis rather. Okay, I'm just going to skip up to tier 3, glance at a couple of those. We have. I'm wondering if they use those at this point. I guess it's not so bad if you take those in the late game. We have the Infector Sicken card. The Infector gains 3 Nemesis tokens, or Gravefold suffers 6 damage. So if it gains 3 Nemesis tokens, that means it's going to trigger everyone's infections the next 3 times until it ticks down to 0, and then someone gains one again. Okay, that's in the late game. That's probably pretty bad. There's like Disperse, Unleash twice. Any player suffers 2 damage and destroys their most expensive card in hand. Yeah, there's a lot of basic effects in there. Stillwalker, an Infector minion. Persistent, Gravehold suffers 3 damage, or any player resolves one of their infections 3 times. Jeez, as a persistent effect. Just 10 health, which is not that bad for a tier 3 minion, though. Hopefully you can blow it up fast. Infernal Scion, Persistent, Unleash. Any player places a card that costs 0 in their discard pile on top of their deck. That player destroys a card in hand. Honestly, well, the Unleash part is bad. Okay, I was like, honestly, this isn't all bad. It's probably not worth unleashing. You still probably want to kill this, but the player destroying a card in hand has its benefits. Neat. Well, that is a look at the Descent. I hope you enjoyed this. I got really a good reception when I did the same thing, kind of actually digging into the cards and the rules in the Unfathomable from the Abyss expansion a couple months ago. So I wanted to do this a little more often. It just kind of, the way that I like to do this is talking about the rules and enjoying looking at the cards and what they do. And so it doesn't work with new games. It's a very expansion-centric style of unboxing that so it's not going to be a regular fixture on the channel. I'm sure it needs to be an expansion that is, interesting to go through its contents and read them, and that it's a game that I enjoy and am familiar with. So, maybe we'll get a few more of those over the months. And hey, I don't think I've suggested this yet. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel. We are mostly a playthrough channel with lots of Aeon's End and tons of other games. But we also do some deep dives where we talk about the characters and cards and games and preview games and more. So yeah, please like the video too, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments whether it would be worth it and interesting to you if I did something similar, just looking at the breachmages and nemesis and maybe the friends and foes in those 2 small expansions that were part of this Kickstarter wave. I'm open to it. I didn't really want this video to go longer than an hour, so I'm feeling good about not doing it here. But I do want to, I will probably be consolidating those right in with this and playing with them from the start. I don't usually get too precious with the order of everything. Okay, that's a video. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate you watching. And until next time, be optimal.